Warriors of National Guard Recruiting. This is Command Sergeant Major retired Dave Eustice with military recruiting experts for your Training Tuesday podcast on the 18th of July, 2023. We have 52 processing days remaining in FY23. And today, as I mentioned last week, I'm going to start a series of interviews of people that have had a great deal of success in recruiting and a great deal of longevity in recruiting. So I will be interviewing First Sergeant Lawrence Eustice. There is a relation. He is my younger brother. I'm not going to say little brother because he seems like he's bigger than me. So thanks for doing this, First Sergeant. And just for the audience, if you can just kind of tell us your National Guard recruiting story. Where did you start? Now you're a first sergeant. What happened in between there?
Well, I started recruiting in 2005 in St. Peter, Minnesota for 1 year. I spent 1 year there, made mission in 2005, 2006. The recruiter of the town next, West Mankato, was decided not to do this job anymore, so I was moved over because it's a bigger area. I was there from 2006 to last year. Ran a multi-man office for all but 1 year. My first year wasn't multi-man, but it became one directly afterwards. So for last, give or take, since 2007, it was a multi-man office with either up anywhere from 3 to 7 people. And then last year I was selected as first sergeant to the Metro Southeast team, which is out of Rosemont.
Well, I kind of feel like you left a few things out of there. In your recruiting career, how many enlistments are you credited with as a production recruiter?
That'd be 432 between 2005 and last year, in 2022.
432 enlistments, people. So if you're a new kid listening to this, pay attention. You might be able to pick something up. So those 432 enlistments, essentially a battalion organization. What's something or the one thing that you can say has kept you at this recruiting thing long enough to get 430 enlistments and to become a first sergeant? How many years in production is that?
That was 17, I believe. So I think the biggest key for me was that, it's never easy starting, but once you get a taste for what the job is and you start to see some success, for me, I became addicted to it. So I loved being at MEPS. I loved watching someone enlist. Along with it, it was the trials that came with it. So if something went wrong or if something went south, there was a challenge that we had to meet. Right? Hey, this kid just gave up this, whatever this was, whether it's I had an eye exam or I had this, right? It was a challenge of getting over those hurdles. So I began to love the game after like the first year, once I started to see what it could be. After the first year, you start to have your feet a little set. I really don't believe people understand how to be a recruiter till after you're 3 or 4. I think that's where you really come into your own, have your own way of doing things. You've either taken stuff from other recruiters or learned stuff along the way, and you're starting to finally get the recruiter you're going to be. Because I don't think any recruiters are the same. I think the recruiters are similar, but how I got stuff done is probably far different than some of my peers got it done. So as that developed, the challenges got a little less, got a lot funner, because then it's just about, we're going to set this appointment, we're going to go do it, and then it's the success part of it that kept you going. The driving through the bad times, I guess, is what keeps you going. At least it did for me. Like, knowing if we keep doing XYZ, my way of doing things, we're still gonna get to the end of the tunnel. We're gonna get to the light. That's what I believe kept me in the game anyway.
Would you have thought that you would have stayed at recruiting during your first year of recruiting?
No. When it got hard the first year, I remember my first year, December 24th, I was at someone else's house doing paperwork. I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna do this long term. This is what it takes. No thanks. But as you get through that year and you see other successes, then it becomes more pliable to what you think you can do. You know, that was the only time I ever do that. There's no other horror stories, but till the second year, like I could see myself staying. But the first year, I was like, I'm gonna do my 3-year contract here. I'm gonna look for a different AGR job. There's gotta be something easier than this job. But as you learn though, like I said, it becomes easier and you get to see the good parts of the job. Like looking at the people's faces you're enlisting, look at their family. You get to see positives that you didn't think you'd care about. But you start to as you get better at the job.
Well, there's a lot of young, we turn over our force every 3 or 4 years.
Right.
So there's a lot of younger recruiters that will get a listen to this. What do you think that they need to do to be able to get through these first couple of years to be able to learn how to be the kind of recruiter they're going to be?
One, they need to start. Should start listening to someone that's an elder person on their team, and I'm saying elder by age, someone that's been doing it longer than them. Every recruiting team has one person that's been doing it over 3 or 4 years. That person's going to have a lot more knowledge. And if it's not on your recruiting team, there's someone in your state that has more knowledge. So when you're at MEPS, pay attention because there's probably an easy way of doing business that you don't know. And then ask questions of people that have been there. Ask the questions like, hey, well, how did you get around this? I'm having trouble with XYZ. As I'm always looking to do something better. I like to say I was a good thief. If I saw something that worked for somebody else, I stole
Well, it's not copyrighted.
it.
So
I said, why are you doing it that?
Now you're a new NCIC. So what do you think that is the most significant difference in those two jobs from being a recruiter for a very long time and being an NCIC? I'll just tell you why I asked that question. There is a perception amongst recruiters that when I become an NCIC, then I'm really not on production anymore.
Well, that's not accurate. I know for my team, initially I wanted to watch how they did appointments. And the first part that was hard, that's the difference is you can't step in. If you're going to truly figure out what your team is, you have to watch some failure, but not necessarily complete. Like there's times to step in interviews and say, hey, I'm his boss. This is why we're asking.
Too choppy, but you were talking about difference between being an NCIC and a recruiter. I think you kind of got that covered, but let's talk about the 17 years in production, all the ups and downs associated with that, and so many people that seen disappear over the years. How do you do 17 years in production? You're still in production now, but as a production recruiter.
In the moment of it, you don't really think of it. At least I didn't. I thought about the next thing. So, it's like when you're the sergeant major, it was always talked about finish a mission, go fishing, take your summers off. So that was the drive during those years. But as those years went away, because they got a little harder and recruiting became more of a full year thing, it became, okay, let's get this year done. What's the next thing I want to do in my career? So for me, I always wanted to hunt the best people. If it was going for Chief 54, which I never won a rank, but I chased after it, or it became top teams. Top teams became a big deal to me. And we ended up with 3 of them in my career. So 2010, 2012, 2019, I think it was. Those 3 were big years where it kept me driving. Or is the milestones, the 100, 200, 300, 400. Those kept me going. The goal to be the next guy, to become an NCIC. Those are what kept me going through the hard times. And there was bleak times where You go 0 for 4 at MEPS on a Friday. And those are probably the days that, you go home, throw some stuff, and you got to go back Monday. So you got to drop it at the end of Friday and then just regroup. I think I did that pretty well, but I'm sure there were times you've called me where I was pretty angry on the way home when we went 1 for 4 or 0 for 3. Those are the hard times I felt like it was hard to get over because of what we had to do to get those people there. And then to lose them, it was very difficult. It was very difficult to handle emotionally, right? Especially if there was error on our part. Like we didn't brief hard enough or it wasn't a good enough brief. Those are the ones that stuck with you. So, but it also became another challenge. Okay, we lost these 3. What ones can we get back? Are these savable? How are we going to save them? Then having another plan to go through whatever we lost. So it was always, for me, it was always a competition of going after one of those things, whether it's a person that was ahead of me for rankings, that they had 17 enlistments, I had 16. Those are the things that kept me going, was just trying to compete for the next thing.
Well, we have a lot of recruiters out there now that when you say there was 3 people at MAPS or 4 people at MAPS, I mean, that's very hard for them to imagine. Well, just one of my philosophies is this is a very simple business. I'm not, that doesn't mean it's easy. But there's some beauty in that the process of recruiting works. Like if you do recruiting, you'll get enlistments. And maybe some of the recruiters out there that are struggling right now, maybe they're having a hard time believing it. But as someone that's enlisted more than 400 people, I mean, what is the key for you to get after doing recruiting 1 first? That like you always got to be recruiting.
But it's something that I think, again, me and you have talked about, but it doesn't even matter if you have this great idea. It could be the worst idea on the planet. As long as you go through and do it, you're going to get some sort of result. You're going to. And then you're going to say, okay, but you can't just do it once. So say you have this idea and it doesn't work the first time, doesn't work the second time. Well, you go on to the next idea. But you got to do recruiting activities every day. And that's one thing that I did well. I lived it. If I was out at a restaurant, that waiter was getting asked. If it was an older person's waiter, hey, do you have any kids that want to join? No, my wife started to live it. One year, my wife got me 2 enlistments because she was doing the same thing in public. It's got to be the commitment to the job of I'm going to do this every day. The problem I think a lot of recruiters have is they hate that N-word. They hate no. They hate it. So they get scared of it. So instead of like being more aggressive in the community saying, hey, shoot me a call, that never works. They're never calling. But if you get their number, now you're in control of it. But they don't want to get shot down. They just want to hand the business card and move on. Those things, it's like we've talked about, you got to grind. You got to go through the whatever the idea is, whether it's kind of go area canvas for an hour, you have to set goals in that hour. I'm going to talk to 10 people. If I get 10 no's, at least I got my 10 no's for the day. But it's the expectation, maybe the next one, the 11th one's a yes. So it's those things. Just as a young recruiter, you got to grind through those things. You got to find your niche. I never really did a lot of cold calls as a recruiter. I hated them. I learned that my first year. But that's what I lived off of my first year too. So after that first year, I'm going to find a better way to do this. So if it's, for me, it was school programs or being in front of the kids out of school. I was good at that, so we hammered that. Then it was the sale after the sale. Coming back from MEPS, hey, you're super happy right now, right? Got to have a buddy. But as a young recruiter, you don't tie all that together. You hear the no, and you get frustrated, and then you stop asking. You always got to ask the question.
Well, there's a lot that you've said there. There's a lot to unpack with that. First of all, always being on as a recruiter. Like always being on and understanding under 40, not fat. I got to talk to these people.
Right.
Right. And so if your family and friends in orbit are not getting upset that you're always talking about the National Guard, probably not talking about the National Guard very much. So I think that's kind of a stomp on the floor thing, it's going to be on the test. If you're always sensing and always asking. But the bigger thing that you mentioned is that N-word thing, and that's comical to me. And I hope the recruiters listen to this, understand this. In order to enlist 400 plus people in a recruiting career, how many no's is that?
Probably millions.
You know, and nobody cares.
No, like drive on. But like I used to say to my wife, I've eaten more spit in drive-throughs than anyone in this state because I'd ask him in a drive-through, right? While they're ordering, hey, you ever think about the guard? And I guarantee someone's like, F that dude and mess with your food. But
Yeah.
we asked everybody. My 8-year-old is now used to asking people. He's recruited for the guard. You should join. But like I said, not everyone's gonna live it, but as the recruiter, you definitely gotta be the one living it every day.
Yeah, it's just the mindset of not wanting the rejection, but knowing that the reality is
Most people are gonna say,
yeah, most people, and most people don't join. I mean, most people aren't going to join. Most people will turn into the 35-year-old that says that they wish that they had joined. And I'm sure you've got about 1 million of those that you've come across, after recruiting in the same area for such a long period of time.
I ran into one yesterday. It's like, I should have listened to you and joined, Sergeant. I'm like, well, it's first sergeant now. And you're still so no, you're gonna have those, and you're gonna have the couple that wish I said I would have stayed in that you've contacted afterwards to trying to get them back in. Right. You're gonna have those regrets too, but that's second tier. But you're the nose, I got over nose really quick. Just because, I think the way we were raised, we heard no a lot. So that was weird to me. Right. It was like shocking that someone just said I couldn't have my way. So
well, and of all your leadership over those years, has any leader ever asked you how many people didn't join with you?
no one's ever asked. Like I even look back at disqualifications and include them in the no's because they didn't get in. But it's gotta be in the millions. I've been told no, millions. And the ones that I found frustrating when you did a great appointment in your head, killed it. That's a home run. That dude's joining. And you call the next day, he's like, no, I'm not interested anymore. Those are the no's that hurt more, not the dude at Safeway or whatever it is, or Super America. You get over those quick, but that young recruiter's got to get over there's going to be a lot of no's. And then you may get a yes from an applicant, you might get a no from a parent. So there's second tier no's that you have to deal with too. But you got to get thick skin quick, I think. If you understand that quotient of I may hear a lot of no's, but I'm looking for one yes, then things get a lot easier in your head.
Well, I want to address another subject area because I think it's becoming a growing problem. Is, after you're a few years in, like you mentioned, you kind of know the business and you're getting referrals. And so that's pretty good.
Right.
But we have recruiters of that, level of longevity get themselves into trouble being referral dependent and not doing the recruiting one.
Right.
So I imagine it happened to you in your career where things are humming along pretty good for referrals. And what's the thing that drives you to keep on doing the prospecting so you don't get burned?
Well, the other part, I enjoyed the job, but early on, like I said, it was a lot of work. So the referrals they're not always going to be there, and you have to have an honest sense of where you're at. Too many recruiters will be like, I got this guy going, so I'm good for the week. Right? Till that dude's in or girl in, you can't have that attitude. You got I'd rather have 5 prospects than 1. That was my attitude for the office. It was my attitude for me. Okay, we got 1 going, but that's not enough. Right? But like back in that time frame, it was finished early. So the quicker I get to that 24, or 26, whatever I was mission that year, that was the hunt. If I could get it by January 1, we were doing it. We're gonna race to it. Now I think that the mentality is, well, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Well, it could be a sprint. If you put the work in, it could easily be a sprint. But the work has to come first. So referrals aren't going to make you survive in a mission, especially today's day and age with what's going on with meth processing. You might have 5 referrals from somebody, and all of them might be disqualified for even getting the meth. So you got to keep doing the grinding stuff. You got to keep going to your schools, contacting, doing the emails, anything that you as a recruiter are good at. You need to keep doing that, but you also have to try this other stuff. And that leads you through the lack of referrals. But it was always trying to finish quick. I never want to leave anything on the table. It was other people were going to beat me if I didn't try and finish as fast as I could.
Well, and it's interesting, to just address the marathon thing, I've run marathons. They don't finish the marathon uphill.
No.
So if you look at, the recruiting year, the back end of our year is incline. This time of year is incline. That's just reality.
Yes.
And we had, when you were first in recruiting, we were developing the mentality that we're going to make mission, go fishing, knock out this mission right away. And that was of great benefit to the recruiters.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I remember that time frame. My first year, it's like I said, when I was one of the people that made it, and I think that my first year, a lot of us made mission that year. 2005, I think 75% of our force made it that year. I could be wrong. You know better than I would, but I looked around the room like, how to be that guy? That guy's got a bunch of hardware. You got this award, that award. Well, how do we get those things? Right? And I had to get my last one. I think you remember this. The day we went to the celebration.
Yeah.
And my last one, the day we got to Camp Ripley. And I just said to myself, well, that sucked. That was horrible. Because the whole way up, I'm waiting for the phone call. The ADOS is with him. I went to Sioux Falls. Is this guy getting in? Because I'd hedged all my bets on the last one. Now we got it, but you cause yourself stress by doing that. And that's why finishing early, like you said, that mentality became a focal point.
Well, that's a good point that you make about causing yourself stress. And it's probably many aspects of the business. And I think probably the biggest aspect that's overlooked is the front end, recruiting one. You will have more stress at the end of the month if you have not done enough prospecting throughout the month. And you will never make up for 25 days of inactivity the last 5 days of the month. And even if you found a unicorn in those last 5 days, in most states, the odds are that unicorn is not getting floored in the last 5 days because everybody's throwing something at the wall at that point in time. So just managing your stress in such a way, the stress that you put on yourself is something that would be interested in you speaking to. Like, what causes the stress sometimes is you cause the stress.
Well, I think, and I did this as a recruiter, so I'm guilty of it. Like, it might be something as simple as a packet going to maps, right? You took a couple shortcuts, weren't hard on the applicant to do a proper application, and now the guy's off the floor and your packet's jacked up. You caused all that. Either you didn't go over his SF-86, you didn't give him a good application, but you caused it. Like, that's on you. Or the first week, like, we got the whole month. No, let's not dial in right away. Like, we had a pretty tough month, or the month before, whatever it was, right? And now you're week 2, you're on 0. Well, now you're down to 3 weeks, not 4. Like, those are things you do to yourself. Or not being prepared for an interview. When you have the stuff, but not being prepared to actually to pull off the mission. Those are all things that could be prevented by any number of things, by either having packets ready to go or just time management. Recruiters, I was bad at time management my first 3 years. I can admit that. You're never going to be perfect. But it's like you said, that causes all the stress because you're not doing the number one thing. The number one thing is always asking people to join. It's always going to be. I had former office partner, first sergeant Clapback, he retired. His one thing to train was ask more people to join. That's his one piece of training. You give anyone that, you got to ask more people to join. What am I doing wrong? You got to ask more people to join. So, but
well, then it's funny because when you say that, there are recruiters out there. It's like, well, duh, right? I mean,
right.
people will say that, and that's what my boss says. The reason why universally in all 54 states, people that are in your position, people that are above you will say that it's because it's true.
right.
That, if you talk to more people will come in your office. More people come in your office, you get more processors. You get more processors, you get more enlistments. It's crazy how the math works.
And in my last year on the street, I literally had a team commander tell me that. Like, that was his big piece of advice for me. I'm like, got it, sir. Nailed it.
Yeah.
That's always the equation for the 17 years I was on the street. That's what it was. It's like the number one thing will always be the number one thing. Ask more people to join.
There is no doubt. So we're kind of running out of time here, but I want to give you an opportunity to really give some pearls of wisdom to recruiters out there right now this time of year. There's recruiters out there right now. They got 4 or 5 enlistments to go. They got 52 processing days remaining. I believe they still can make mission. And I wonder what you would say to those individuals with what they need to do at the time that they have left in order to get that mission delivered.
Well, I was lucky. I was a good summer recruiter, but it goes back to the work ethic, right? Like, unless I was on leave, even when I was on leave, I was probably asking people to join. But the biggest thing is, don't con yourself. You can say I got these 3, but if you really look at those 3, one's got a 12 on a pretest, doesn't count. One's missing an ankle, doesn't count, right? One, the parents aren't going to say yes. So you really have 0. But recruiters will con themselves saying, I've got these 3 to go. Well, that's not accurate. You have to be honest with yourself what you got going and how much more work you got to do. If you're on 5, you shouldn't even be thinking about not working until you hit number 4 and there's 3 more people on the floor. Grinding through it is what's going to get you through. And the honesty with yourself and just knowing, okay, we got, what'd you say, 52 more days?
Yeah.
Right? Well, dedicate the 52 days to make a mission. Because it's a lot sweeter making a mission than not making a mission. You're going to be one of the people that made it. We call the mission maker, parades and rose pills thrown at your feet to make it versus garbage thrown at you. So those things are what's going to get you through it. And if you honestly take a look in the mirror and say, have I done enough work to make mission right now? And the answer is no. Well, you owe the next 52 days to make sure you do make it. And
yeah, there's 74-ish calendar days and 52 processing days. So most days that remain are days that you could put someone in.
Right.
Right. So, and for that recruiter, they probably don't want to hear it. They probably don't. But what is the value of grinding it out? It's not just about this mission. Like, in your mind, what will it do if they grind it out and go get those 4 or 5?
Well, one, you feel accomplished. Everyone has an end of year function for your battalion. Almost every state, I believe. I know we do. And being one of the people that didn't make it, to me, I would never want to be that guy. I never want to be part of the people that were over here in the corner. They didn't want to talk to one because they didn't make it. That's one. 2, you're going to know you can do it then, especially if you're a first-year recruiter. Knowing I can make this mission will carry you the next year. And if you're working that hard the last 70 days of this year, it will carry over the new year. It will carry over to FY24. And your FY24 will be far easier than FY23 because you're going to start out harder. You're going to have stuff in your pipeline if you're doing the work going into October to enlist right away. And now I have the NCOIC or Sergeant Major calling you saying, hey, where's my contracts? Those are the biggest benefits. And then, like I said, for me, I wanted to make sure I was competing with my peers, right? You're giving your peers way too much ammo if you're a guy that didn't make it, and you're letting down your teammates and the organization. Now, I never wanted to be that person where I could say honestly, my 17 years, no teammate could look at me and say you owe me, not one. So I didn't want to be that guy. And you know as well as I do, I had some of those guys on my team where I was the guy saying, "Hey, you owe me."
Yeah. Well, that's good stuff. I do appreciate you doing this, and I think there's some benefit to recruiters of all ages to take advantage of what you're doing. And like I mentioned, these last 11 episodes are going to be people that have had success in recruiting and have gotten after it in recruiting and love the game and love the business and love changing lives. So I appreciate you doing this. And for the rest of the National Guard recruiting, take this advice, get after it, and get that mission.